Chapter 3. I could hear the nervousness in news anchor Mark Hamish's voice as he spoke. Hamish had been reading me the news on the radio my entire life. I'd never heard him like this, and his insecure fumbling quieted everyone. It seemed there was only me and the radio. Even after my mom arrived, casually bringing the shotgun into Abraham's house, like you just walked around with a gun all day instead of a purse or whatever, I barely registered her presence. I voted for the Democratic Union, but I always had respect for Prime Minister Stone. He'd helped our economy a lot by dramatically increasing mainland salvaging expeditions. He'd increased our natural gas reserves and improved food delivery, especially fresh food like fish and hothouse vegetables to the poor. He even knew who I was. Whenever I was walking to school or to the fish market or whatever, and happened across him, he'd always tip his hat and say, "The daughter of my loyal opposition," and I'd say, "Mr. Prime Minister, sir." Something about him felt magical. I don't buy into any of that if you don't have a dad, you fall for powerful men crap, but I liked the Prime Minister, and I expected him to comfort me, because Mark Hamish sure couldn't. We're expecting to hear from the Prime Minister momentarily. I've been told he's making his way down to our station headquarters at the moment. But again, to recap, a creature with the virus has apparently been seen on the banks with the South End neighborhood, where this creature apparently attacked at least one individual 2 blocks up from the shore on Madison. Both the stricken individual and I'm hearing Prime Minister Stone will be here very soon. Mr. Prime Minister, sir, yes, he's here with us live in the studio. I'll turn the mic over to him. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister of Banks Island, Jack Stone. He cleared his throat, and then spoke with all the confidence that Hamish had lacked. Fellow citizens and friends, our island remains safe. One male Z arrived via boat at Banks with a large supply of corn kernels, presumably for planting. It is well known that Z's seek to infect people. Seeing a human settlement, it appears the Z arrived in town and bit one immigrant resident, Marcus McIntyre, who was tragically but appropriately killed by Mia Featherstone, who saw the attack from her apartment window and brought down a licensed hunting rifle. Miss Featherstone, who lived longer in the United States than almost any survivor of the pandemic, is well trained and knows the dangers of Z's better than most. Her swift, decisive actions saved lives today, and although she and I have long been political opponents, I am in her debt. Miss Featherstone and several units of the Banks Marines cleared the area, searched it tirelessly, and uncovered no further infections. I wish to express my thanks, and the island's thanks, to Miss Featherstone and to our security forces, who responded to this threat appropriately, sensibly, and with great courage. Our security forces contain both immigrants and native Canadians, and today I have been reminded that there is no longer a Canadian or a Mexican or a Honduran or an American on this island. There are only humans. Banks is our country, all of ours, and I want to announce tonight that our party will no longer oppose voting rights for immigrants. We were reminded today that immigrants are among our heroes, and in the next election they will be among our voters. We are a young island. Most of our citizens have never known a time in which these pose a threat. But tonight, my friends, we are an island that must grow up quickly. If one can arrive in a boat, another can. And next time, we might not be able to contain the attack. In the coming days and weeks, we will work with all of the island's political parties and our military to determine the best path forward. But rest assured, fellow citizens, we will fight for our home and native land. The threat may feel near today, but has never been far. Think of the island's heroes who've died on the mainland so the island might be free, safe, and prosperous. Tonight, we bring our strength into our hearts, and together, always together, we protect our island, our nation, our continent, and our species. I sing poorly, friends, so I hope you will join me. The Prime Minister began to sing the national anthem, O Canada. Soon you could hear other people in the studio singing. I heard Mark Hamish and then many other voices, and then Abe and his parents were singing, and for the first time in my life I heard my mother sing the anthem too, with tears in her eyes. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, And even though I'd never felt like Canada was my country, I was singing too. God keep our land glorious and free. Mom wrapped both arms around me, and we all sang in full voice, the whole of our island. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. You could hear the applause not only in the apartment and in the neighborhood, but on the whole island, and people finally united by the anthem of a nation that no longer even really existed. The thing is, we hadn't had time to make our own songs yet, and if the Z's had anything to say about it, we never would. We had electricity all night instead of 2 on, 1 off, like usual, so that we could listen to the election results come in, which was interrupted by lots of analysis from scientists and other experts theorizing how the Z got to the banks and what it wanted. Mom said almost nothing the whole night. Her party's election rally and all the election rallies had been cancelled. Abe's parents and my mom shared a bottle of wine as the results came in. As expected, the Democratic Union did slightly better than in past elections since more kids of Immies could vote, but they still only polled 22% across the island. Stone's party was denied a majority, but not by much, meaning they'd form a coalition with the Democratic Union and the other main opposition party, the Greens. Mom wouldn't be in Parliament, but as the leader in the party, she had a chance for the cabinet post if the Democratic Union ended up in the coalition. All in all, about the best we could have hoped for. To celebrate, both Abe and I were given glasses of wine. It was really good wine, rich and earthy, and throat-burning like grape juice infused with a touch of both smoke and fire. Mom watched me as I drank. "You like it?" she said. "I do." She had a faraway look on her face, and I thought she might be worried. "I'm not going to become an alcoholic or anything, Mom. Booze is too expensive." "Yeah, we'll just huff paint. Cheaper, and a much better high," Abe said. "Abraham," said his father. "Clearly I'm kidding," Abe said. "Have I ever not been kidding in my entire life?" It occurred to me that Abe hadn't. Not really. Mom was still looking at me. "Geez, Mom, seriously, stop worrying." "I'm not worrying. I'm just remembering. I always loved wine too, Caroline. In the days before I headed north, I lived in a wine cellar for a while. I was just thinking I was your age then, drinking a bottle of wine a day, and here you are having your first sip of it ever." Abe snickered. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "I'm as pure as the driven snow. I've never kissed a boy, tasted alcohol, smoked a cigarette, told a lie, or otherwise sullied my inborn perfection, Mother." She just smiled at me, like she knew more of the world than I ever would. Later, Mom decided to go back to the apartment, just to make sure everything was okay, but made me stay at Abe's. It was past midnight when she left. Abe's parents turned off the radio and sent me to bed. Me in his bed that I had dated from the bees, and him on his half-inch feather-stuffed mattress on the floor. I lay down wearing long johns, jeans, a long-sleeve undershirt, a pink wool sweater, and a hat. In short, I was not particularly in a vulnerable state or anything. This is a trope you will always see from stories in the bees. Like, a girl and a boy end up in a room together, and suddenly they're half-dressed, and then the whole thing just becomes inevitable, but on Banks, sleepovers were utterly unsexy. Abe, also adequately dressed, did crunches off in the corner of the room, talking the whole time. "I think I'll volunteer," he said. "For the scavenge crew? They won't take you. You're in med school, Abe. There's no shortage of strong backs for scavenging." "No, for the service. You know, there's gonna be a recruitment drive now. It's inevitable. We've got to establish a perimeter." "No offense, but you'd make a terrible soldier." "Why? I can talk to you while I'm doing sit-ups. I'm fit enough." "You're just not a soldier. You're a nerd. I mean, even the way you work out is nerdy. You don't have like a killer..." "What do you mean the way I work out is nerdy? How many calories have you burnt in the last 5 minutes?" I don't know, 17 or 18 probably." "Abe, that's not something normal people know." He sighed and hopped up to a standing position in a single fluid motion. "What's your type?" he asked. "If you don't like soldiers, and you don't like med students, and you don't like nerdy fitness enthusiasts, what exactly are you looking for in this world, Caroline?" "What, romantically?" "Yes, romantically." "I'll tell you what I'm not into. I'm not into people. like constructing themselves in a super self-conscious way in order to be attractive. I'm not into lives that are just kind of merely performed, you know? I like people who are living their lives. There are people who volunteer for the service who do it because they really love their country and they feel that's the best way to serve it. And then there are people who want to be heroes. I love you, Abe. I love you to death, but I think you want to be a hero. He smiled and closed lips. I like that you never bullshit me, Caroline. But it would be okay, you know, if you just wanted to bullshit me occasionally. He turned off the lights. What a luxury to choose when in the evening that darkness comes. I couldn't sleep, of course, because I'd seen McIntyre clutching his chest, and because Emmys could vote now, and because Mom might be in the freaking cabinet, and because I could tell that Abe wasn't asleep either. This is a totally perverse thing to say about dead people, but seeing McIntyre and the Z, it made me feel this huge adrenaline rush. This unprecedented awareness that I was alive, that I remained among all other things still growing in the universe. It could have been me who of course would have been bitten, but it wasn't. And this surge of feeling, this hyper-awareness of my aliveness, felt more intense than anything I've ever felt. And that's when I realized that I might be a warrior after all, like my mother was. Hell of a coincidence, Abe said in the dark. What? A Z shows up for the first time in the history of the banks, on election day, the same election day that Stone announces Emmy voting rights. That's a lot of events to occur on a single day. I guess. I think the Emmy vote is all about unifying people before a battle, though, you know? Yeah, he said, and then it was quiet again, for minutes, and I returned to my consideration of McIntyre's corpse and my aliveness. I don't know, maybe I should have felt ashamed about it, but I really didn't. You awake? Yup, I said. It's just like, even supposing you do make it to the banks, you probably land on some godforsaken rock 100 miles from here. And the wind was coming from the north. He doesn't have a motorboat, does he? He's smart enough to tack a sail against the wind, or strong enough to row across the ocean. And on today of all days, he washes up on our town and kills a widower. I don't understand what you're saying. Is there some alternate explanation? I'm not saying anything, Caroline, except that's a hell of a coincidence. I went home to change at dawn. I took a long, if not particularly warm bath and got dressed. Long johns, long-sleeved t-shirt, cardigan, coat, gloves, and scarf from the beads declaring the glory of Liverpool Football Club. England was gone now, from everything we could gather. Too fertile, too close to the initial outbreak, too urban. All of Europe had been, really. A huge part of Africa had survived, and once every few years they'd fly a recon mission over the banks, but they never landed. Everything we knew came from the leaflets they dropped, and the armaments that would come down in wooden crates attached to parachutes. They wanted us to win, but couldn't risk their meager fuel supply. They wanted us to win, but couldn't risk their fuel. They wanted us to win, but couldn't risk their meager fuel supplies. So they said. They had a lot more fuel than us if they could fly planes around the world, though. But anyway, I wrapped myself in the scarf of a football club that had played in a now non-existent nation and walked downstairs into the frigid north wind, towards school in hopes of being alone again with my zombie for a while, so I could think about it, her pancreas and her liver, and what made her variety of human, if indeed she were human, so much more effective than my variety of human. But on the way, I saw a crowd gathered down Main Street by Voss, scavenged and new. When it is 31 below zero, which is to say usually, crowds don't often form outdoors on banks. So since I had a bit of extra time, I decided to walk down there and see what was going on. I could hear the bullhorn before anything else. A man dressed in scavenged fatigues on the Canadian Army stood on the roof of Voss's, shouting, "We will only take 50 volunteers today. Only 50 today. You come back tomorrow, and we may take more." Abe was at the back of the line. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked. He handed me the front page of our 4-page newspaper. The Bank's Restorer. Headline. "A message from the Prime Minister." Subhead. "We can wait no longer." I scanned the article. We would initially send some scouts into the field, penetrating deep into the mainland, trying to establish which Z communities threatened us. These scouts would not be an army, merely observers, who would report back so the service could respond appropriately. Then he got into the Collins. Every school child on Banks read the work of Susan Collins, the anthropologist and military strategist whose work on defensive warfare proved vital in the initial survival of many Canadians and whose calculations were still taken as gospel on the Banks. But the Prime Minister tackled them head on, especially her famous statement that we would need 2 million armed soldiers to fight 100 million Zs believed to be alive. Collins argued that within 4 or 5 generations we could grow our population enough to fight them, particularly since she believed Z populations grew very slowly on all the 20-something dead ones. The Prime Minister quoted all these statistics and then responded, "But how can we grow our population without resources to feed and house and clothe those children? Only by protecting our island from the scourge. To wait is to surrender." "Turn the page," Abe said after I finished. On page 3 was another editorial beneath the article about Mr. McIntyre's death. "The Opposition Stands with the Prime Minister" by Mia Featherstone. "So what are you going to do?" "No. So are you going to?" "Hell yes," Abe said. "I'm smart, I'm quiet, I know how to walk in the woods. Those seem to be the only prerequisites for the job. And you?" "Hell no." "Why?" he asked. "Because I'm privileged to attend med school, as are you, where we can do much more for our country than any military scout." My mother never talked much about her year in America in the A's. I know I was named for a friend of hers who died, and I know she stayed longer than most because her sister was Z'd up, and I know about her escape to Banks, and she never talked about killing or anything like that. And I never wanted to find out what it would be like to be surrounded by brain-damaged corn addicts. "Suit yourself," he said. "But before you go, quick question. Have you always wanted to marry a hero of the zombie wars?" I rolled my eyes. "Abe, you're like my brother. Secondary question. Are you into incest?" "Abe!" He smirked. I hugged him and walked to class. I went home that afternoon, walking past the queue outside of Voss's, which still snaked for almost a block. In the apartment, Mom was hunched over a desk, writing furiously when I opened the door. She quickly flipped over the sheet of paper and said, "Caroline, we need to talk." "Yeah, we do," I said. "Have you seen the line to volunteer for the war that you endorsed?" She motioned for me to sit on the bed. She motioned for me to sit on the bed. "I may have made a mistake," she said quietly. I know you think adults haven't figured out, Caroline, but I'm the same person I always was." "What the hell does that mean?" "We need scouts in the field, Caroline. These Z's, they may not be ashore yet, but they'll kill more and more scavengers every year. And it's only a matter of time before a weak-minded scavenger fails to admit he's been bitten and gets sent home. Just trust me, Caroline. You cannot possibly understand the stakes here." "They aren't ashore, because one was yesterday." "Right, yes, well..." She stood up, looked out the window down toward the sidewalk. "What?" "I didn't kill him, if that's what you're thinking. McIntyre volunteered. I couldn't have done that to him. A soldier, a good soldier, doing his... Wait, volunteered? He offered to die? What the hell are you talking about?" "In exchange for the IMI vote, McIntyre volunteered. The leaders of the party worked out an agreement, Caroline. We get the vote. Stone gets support for scouting parties he needs to expand our perimeter. McIntyre knew better than anyone that too many of our men and women working on the mainland are being attacked. So yes, Caroline, obviously I'm trusting you with the national secret, but I'm doing so because I love you and I need you to understand. McIntyre was shot by an army officer. The Z was imported, dead, from the mainland." "No, Mom, bullshit. I saw him. I saw the Z's twitching." They implanted a device, an electrical device, that made the corpse spasm. The corpse spasm. That made the corpse spasm. That's what you saw. Caroline, we need these scouts. We need people that understand the seriousness. I was furious. I got right up in her face. So you decided to fill boys like Abe with patriotic fervor and send them off to hunt them in the mainland wilderness for Z's. That's... Abe volunteered? Yes, Mom, he did. He did it because, I'll try to get him off the list. No, that's not how... It doesn't work that way. We don't play favorites in this country. You should know that, Mom. You should know that if you pull this crap, anyone could volunteer. Abe could. Hell, I could. No, Caroline, you can't. Sure I can, Mom. You don't think I love my country? You don't think I want to honor Mr. McIntyre's wishes? If he died so that there might be full of if he died so that I might be full of revolutionary Z-hating zeal, and that so you might have more political power, maybe I should just thank him by going right down to Voss's and putting my name in. Caroline, I forbid you. But I was so full of feelings, full to bursting with hate and rage and sadness and disappointment, and still with that lingering feeling of life and that only bearing the witness to death can give you. So full that I could not take it, and shouted, I'm going! You can't stop me! I wrapped my Liverpool scarf around my face. Mom jumped up and grabbed me. She was strong, but not as strong as she once had been. I threw her to the ground and ran downstairs and then down the street toward Voss's. I found Abe inside, browsing a rack of scavenged greeting cards. Standing next to the table where service members in fatigues took your relevant stats, I was one of the last to offer my services. I have no idea if Mom followed me, but at any rate, she never found me.